You are now checking out
the Win Podcast,
where the everyday people
are the celebrities.
So let's get to know them.
The writing of the music came out of a deep intention to find a way of expressing through afro-beat from another whole perspective. I didn't want to go. I mean, when I first got into, let me write my first song using all the models of how fella writes, because from playing with Antibalas, it's almost like I went back to school, because it's all music students who I was able to understand the music from music theory, from being associated with all of them. I was able to do some reading, I did my own individual reading without, I didn't go to music school, but I was able to transpose things that I was hearing to what I could read and what I could write. And I relied mostly on all the melodies that I grew up with, my grandmother was she was a Yalawu, she was a spirit, she was a medicine woman.
Oh, wow.
And so I grew up with her, and I observed her perform all her typical ritual of her healing methods and how to consult the spirit world. So I grew up in that whole environment. I possess this drum called the Bidu drum, which is like a spirit drum, which I got from Ife, from the very river, or the Oshun River, where all the stories come from, like in terms of like the Roko tree. So all of that is that is my comfort zone, So being in this group, I was basically all of that information was being like released. I was able to apply them because they're all melodies that would come back to you.
How did you get started with that group? Like, did you felt like it was in a sense that it was at the perfect time, but it was meant for you?
Yes, it was a synchronistic time because, like I was saying, I was on my way out of the U.S. I went to college. I went to Howard University. I came here, seeking for this American dream that I had a taste of. Not from here. I had a taste of it in Nigeria. I had a taste of the civil rights movement. I had a taste of it in Nigeria because of all the artists that came during Festac. With them came this swag, this American, freedom swag. We're number one, badass, black and proud. That shit was fucking badass. So, as a teenager, man, that was very intoxicating. I was around a lot of the artists that came. I was very, very fortunate to have been working with a Nigerian star. It's like a local comedian who was also the staff of the festival. So I was closest to him, and I ran errands for him. So running errands for him, I got to be exposed to all the fun stuff happening, the social activities, and going to the shrine, seeing like Stevie Wonder, Sunrise, and all. We didn't know who they were, but Stevie Wonder, but Sunrise didn't really knew. I didn't know the magnitude of what he was all about, but he had that whole vibe.
But was funny because you was around already people in Nigeria that had that magnitude.
Exactly. So I was catching their vibration because that vibration was sort of there for for the youth at that time, and fella would have been I guess 10, 20 years older than me. So that age difference, I was aware of that period. And that period was in the 70s, 78, 79, I was in my 15, 16, 17, impressionable, years, or years of trouble for teenagers, when teenagers get into all kinds of problems.
Right.
What to do with that. That's a tough age. At that age, I was deep in martial arts. I was fortunate. I was very focused.
So that's how the martial arts came into your life around 15?
Around 10.
Around 10.
10 was from I used to go to boarding school through this neighborhood. And when I walked to school, I would walk by this Chinese restaurant. I saw it as a Great Wall of China. It was like this big, because I was, as a kid,
Yeah.
and from my perspective, this was like this tall, giant wall, yellow wall that just stretches for like a mile. And it had like this, it wasn't about a mile, but it was in my mind as a kid, it was like a mile long, like red, had a red tip, had barbed wires, it kind of looked like a prison. So, and at the end of that block was this guy that sold books. So this guy took a liking to me. He would give me like comic books. I'd grab a book from him, take to school with me, and then every weekend I'm done, I'll return a book. So because I always returning books to him, he would give me another one. One day, he gave me this book called The Third Eye. The Third Eye was by this guy called Robson Rampa. Third Eye was not really your, it's not a book that I would say that's your gateway into the teachings of yoga and all that, but it was my gateway because the things that I saw in that book, I was very visual. Images that I saw kind of like just really like spoke to me. Even the cover was the first one. The guy's his third eye. I saw that he looked like David Copperfield, like a magician.
Nice.
So that whole magical look, the backdrop, his third eye, and traveling to the astral world. That was me. So it's like at 10. I felt this otherness.
You was already getting a message.
Yeah, I was already, feeling this, and having lived with my grandmother, having experienced the things that she did with Orisha. A lot of my other relatives had no clue, even though they knew, but they were a little bit too afraid of it.
Right.
So I was very close to her, and I saw how she was able to navigate her way through that practice, traditional practice with religion. She was also like she was going to this Cherubim and Seraphim church. It was like a Baptist church. So I went to church with her. I go home with her. She's doing this other practice. So for me, it was all part of each other, right? And I was also like a dreamer in church. I was one of the kids that would tell my dreams to the congregation, and they would try to interpret it. So my dreaming, the way that I could explain things and the things that I see, it put me in this category in church where I would sit in this section. They called that section for dreamers. We were also the ones that played all the drums, the music. So I was already being indoctrinated, or at least being in a beautiful way,
right,
into like being like a medium or someone that I can transpose things that I hear into instrumentation. And it's not only limited to just that instrument. It's limited. It's a limitless application of all these melodies. And I always saw things as always interconnected. And
right,
so interconnectivity was always the things that I would be drawn to. So through my interconnected world and my mind and my school, I was an art student. I was an architecture minor, focusing on medical illustrations. I wanted to get into like detail and processes of illustrations. I wanted to understand how this machine works, but not just how it's working, but what like I could look at this case right now and I can see the insides of it. Without opening, I could kind of like understand how it could be designed on the inside. So that my mind had been able to explode things into understanding how and then putting it together, which is kind of what they talk about in DMT. Like if whoever does DMT, you go to this place of like, so in some form, whenever I hear those kind of information, I feel like, yes, I feel that. I know that. I've been there or somehow. So there was this knowingness around things that I would try to associate myself with, or at least try to understand, So that knowingness or this otherness allows me to be able to process it, a little bit differently.
It seems like you are born with this gift, right? And many gifts. Being around your grandmother, she's teaching you a lot of the spiritual and the healing. The music, already you're dissecting. You see things differently. Even when you went to Kung Fu, learning Kung Fu, you're learning it, and like you said later on, it connect the layers.
Yes.
You keep on reaching different
Exactly.
layers.
Yeah.
But it's like your brain is seeing further than the surface. How was you able to mold that and use that for yourself, I guess, to be in tune and maybe heal yourself, and then in turn, because it seemed like you used it now in everything you use, and you almost healing others by healing yourself.
I'm glad you put it that way, because it's one of those. I get this self affirmation, which is like this happiness, like this endless happiness, where I'm always in a place where I can't get angry or sad longer than a few minutes. It just doesn't work for me to like hold, like bitterness or anger. I just kind of, because I recognize that those are like things that has to do with tension and stress and those are whatever the first, so the highest killer of man is stress, if you will, of humans. So I internalize that kind of stuff already. Like, it's like one of those first few things that you hear, kind of like when they tell you, don't go there or don't touch the fire. But someone like me, obviously, when I was a kid, I probably did it too. But I registered it in a different way, where I would not. It almost becomes a mantra in some way for me. And I think martial arts also helped me understand, or at least practice, and actually get a little deeper into the practice of repetition, the practice of, because I love the practice of repetition. Like, some people don't like it. I like to repeat the same shit over and over again for a few. That's me. I'm one of those guys that, you want to just do this for like 5 months? Yeah.
Well, they said that you become a master of something when you do it like repeatedly over and over and over and over again.
Exactly. Exactly. Because it's almost, it's like, it's a universe of its own, because it has its own, it's got a cadence, it's got a rhythm, and it's got it's got a melody, and it's got a note. And every time you have a note, and whenever you strike that note, it creates a vibration. As soon as you do that, something has to catch that vibration. Something does, because we live in the vibrational world. We are vibrating energies. So if you're vibrating energy and catching something, right, you don't get that good feeling, that thing that just makes you feel so sweet. When you hear a groove, man, that shit is just banging. That's vibrationally connecting with how you resonate. And so finding how you resonate with things is so like the domain that I like to exist in. And I feel like whenever I'm resonating at a perfect harmony with whatever I'm doing, I'm able to like express that beautifully, and I'm able to inspire, or I'm able to like express it where someone is getting inspired.
Right. I agree with you with that, because when I first saw you, I'm a huge fan of Charles Bradley, Sharon Jones, and I heard of your music, and I was like, man, I love this. It reminded me of similarities of Fela Kuti, and I was like, I love afro-beat, I love all those traditional music. It just, there's a lot behind it, the groove and everything. And I first saw you about maybe 4 years or so. It was like a Daptone revival. All you guys perform at Apollo Theater.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, this could be my first time to get to see you guys perform, you. And man, I was so inspired by you, because what you do on stage for me is not only you're giving so much, but also you're giving people messages and healing them. Because there's one example. I never seen anyone get up, everyone getting up, and you said in the count of 3, we're all going to yell. And I'm like, I'm going to yell, because I know what that's going to do. That's going to release any negativity, anything that I'm feeling. And I'm like, I hope this doesn't go over people's head, because this is a great thing that this guy's doing and utilizing the music. I was like, this place is going to explode. I never saw that in my life, with everyone in Apollo yell. And to me, it was just so beautiful, because it was also very spiritual.
Yes.
And I said, this is
at the core of it all.
Yes, yes. And I'm like, this is more than music to this guy. Music, of course, is the foundation. But when I use my eyes and dissect it, there's a deeper message behind here that I hope everyone would get. How did you, I guess, form that this worked for you? And now, how did you form that to put that in your music now?
Yeah, you see, I'm glad you said that. Like, how did it work for me? And And as I was trying to express earlier about, birth, like when I got into, like deeper into the process of creation and birthing and, having like a home birth. So that whole process of prepping myself, like my wife, because I was watching the baby, growing her, and and then in my own mind, because I had done all this, I had gone through medical illustration. I know about anatomy, so I internalized that stuff. I was trying to understand what's going on inside of her, and I was like, it was blowing my mind, like what nature does, and how. So I was like, all that stuff. I was so consumed in that whole world that I was there. I watched the baby get burned, and I held her in my hand, and I was like, wow. I was like, I thought the baby was actually going to be like a monster because I saw paper come out and unfold. Like the way the baby comes out is nothing like I've ever even when I watched all the videos, it wasn't like that. Because when she first came out, it was almost like her face was like two-dimensional in a weird, interesting way, like in my my artistic mind, like the way my mind works. And then I kind of watched it, take form because it opened up, her face swelled up, and her head turned into like a little small, because it was a little bit weird because it has to squeeze to come out.
It's like a cone.
Alien a little bit. Exactly. So all that stuff was important to me to really process it. So as I watch her grow, as I start writing songs, as I start now, I just can't get on stage and sing the same way. I have to really, how can I share this experience on stage? Then I was able to coin or extrapolate out of that the whole thing on deep unconditional love. Like that whole deep unconditional love for me was all about creation. And then I realized that when you create something like that, the kind of love you have for that, for your kid, if the father, we have that, like we got the one that just have nothing to do with it. But once you go to that area, once you process to do that, man, that is where unconditional love is, and that is people that don't have that, people that don't go through that experience, they don't really experience that, don't understand it.
Right.
And that's how I see society. Anyone who has never created a kid with the intention of creating, not just, man, I'm busting out here, make babies here and kind of move on. Hey, shut up. Whenever I say, I say, you don't say shit. No. The process of creation is like, creating that, co-creating until that person is ready to go out in the world. So everything that you do is part of it. Because that DNA that you just spliced, right, is still learning. You have this invisible umbilical cord, which is just, as long as it's around you, it's growing with you. It's constantly, mimicking. That's how biomimicking is happening. So when you start applying science of how we're learning and how people or how things are in the universe, how we behave, how my thought process is not isolated. It's not just me thinking this. Someone else thinking exactly what I'm thinking down the street. I mean, we all like connected through not just there is this invisible world, if you will, right?
Yeah.
That is full of shit, like full of space, right?
This fantasy that's created that live to be through robots and be closed up and
so it's like, wow. So all of a sudden, if you internalize it, you start to get it. It changes the way you speak, it changes the way anything you put out there, you are like, it's part of your thought process. If I'm writing something out of a negative space, that's what's going to come out. Or if I intensely, and when I had her, and when it occurred to me that I needed to learn or figure out or reshape how I message on stage, because I felt like this platform for me wasn't just given to me for nothing. I didn't just, because I wasn't really intending to sing in a band, All that, it was all this pure chance. I wanted to take that, I wanted to build a product that I know would change or at least help as part of the change. So I was making clothes, I was always doing things that had to do with I was making martial arts clothing. Even when I got the spot in Williamsburg, across the street from here, because when I was here in Lower East Side, I came into New York. I was about to leave America, right? I done college, worked 9 to 5. I worked in my field, the graphic design, advertising company, Pepco in DC, electric power company. So I was working in the field that I went to school in. I was doing illustrations and technical drawings and blah, blah. But knowing that it wasn't really it wasn't contributing like how I wanted. I knew I had some sort of contribution, but I wanted to be more directly contributing to people and changing and making people feel something. So it was shaping what I wanted to look for that I was not happy doing in DC. So I came to New York on my way out. I was going to go to London first because my whole family's there. So I stopped over in New York. I had, out of DC, I created a group of 24 people, dancers and performers, and I would teach martial arts. And then I created this whole movements that are based on martial arts and dance to talk about togetherness. We would design all those little moves, and then these guys would create a shape, and then it spelled unity. So I was doing things like, oh, that's so cool. They just spelled unity. Oh, shit. So I said, well, let's add more. So I add T-shirts. We should wear clothes to make that whole thing really powerful. So from doing T-shirts, and then I created like a whole, how do you say it, a manifesto. And I blew it up in a big poster. And I would just have it there. It was unity, but each U it expressed something, that had to do with what's going on in the world today. So people would come to my booth if I was selling T-shirts or promoting any shows that we had. I would have my whole setup, the manifesto, T-shirts. So I had this. I was creating I guess if you will, a group for change, if you will, right? And then at that time, DC was going through a lot of city violence. Violence was coming from the West Coast. The Crips and Bloods were infiltrating DC. It was like in the 90s, so all that change was occurring. People were like, a lot of my friends I went to school with, were having problems, either gone to jail for one thing or the other. Those who were involved in fast cars, fast money. I was into a fast car too. Right. I had a Corvette, but mine was I bought it from the guy, fixed it up. Yeah. And so mine looked raggedy, but I was hanging with it.
Yeah, but I still had the Corvette. It still said Corvette though.
Exactly. It was not Porsche. They all had 911 Porsche. Tiger, Anyway, because at that age, your peers, your friends, so that was our social connection. We go to the clubs in DC. So DC just went through that period where every person who was in that world, all some people that I was hanging with, all ended up in jail because they were involved in drugs. So fortunately, I wasn't in that world. I didn't go all the way with them. So I decided I started this group called the New Race, this dance crew. We did our thing in DC. Then I decided maybe I should, because it felt like it came to an end. Either I was going to raise more money, because it was 24 people. I couldn't really take us, because we had this dream to go on a world tour. Because all these guys were all excited. Let's raise money. And I'm like, where is this money going to come from? Because it's 24 of us. But in DC, we're cool because we get together weekly. That was before your MTV Raps.
Oh, wow.
So we were already pre-your MTV thing. We were getting together and we do a whole Soul Train, Dance Train. So it became like a community gathering of all these kids from different pockets of DC that will come together. So what attracted them was I was teaching them all martial arts. They all wanted to study martial arts. So that was the glue. That was the attraction that they were going to learn, because that's how I recruited them. And I recruited them because my recruit process was I used to go and dance in dance battles in DC at this club called Tracks. So my style was martial arts. So whenever they would see me they would do spin. I would just come in there, do 4 kicks. the kicks would pop so hard. I mean, I had like so through martial arts, I understood how to make movement. I knew how to communicate with movement. Like so. In martial arts in the martial arts that I was studying, Jiaoga was a beautiful style, beautiful art. So I took some of the more beautiful aspects of it, some of the beautiful movement. I made it into like a dance loop, where I would loop a movement in martial arts.
That sounds so complicated.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it's almost like a DJ you find your sweet spot on your record, and then you just crack it back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But how are you doing that with martial arts?
Exactly. That was for me was like the trick. There was only one other guy that he wasn't copying me, but he took what I was doing, or at least he was doing something slightly like me, but to another whole level because he had the body. He was this Ghanaian guy who was black as midnight with a body. You could see his muscles. So any move he makes, you go, whoa! So he knew how to do what you call subtle. He had a subtle jerk dance move where he would be softly moving like in slow motion. He would jerk. He had all his muscles. So his jerking moves, my jerking moves, but in martial arts stances. Because I would hop into all my stances, flip up in the air, and drop. And I would dance. And I would hop. So I would just loop those moves and then flip, and then make it move around in a circle. So it was like, same kind of like what you do when you were creating your freestyle dance. So that was how I recruited all these dancers. All the best dancers came and joined my crew. I said the best performing crew called the New Race. So we started doing performances at clubs. So if you wanted to see this crew that all had martial art moves, so now they all started incorporating martial arts into their dance. So I encouraged them to say, look, this is your style. Let me show you a technique in martial arts that fits that style. So you can use that as your little, whatever, your little statement.
Yeah.
So whenever you do your move, and you pop that statement in martial arts. This is how I fight. So that whole fight and finish thing was already being born out of this groups that I was doing, like in DC, and then coming to New York, and then I wanted to restart that. That was an exciting time in DC because it occupied me for 2 years. Because I did that group. It helped me start a t-shirt business. I bought a machine, I printed t-shirts, I did festivals in DC. I was able to use the money from that to run the crew. So I bought a van, so we have a van to go to places and do all our shows. So all the money I was making was going right into
reinvesting.
I was just trying to create something before I leave America. I was kind of like, this is something that I can continue on because it's related to my clothing line. So that's how I birthed my clothing line. I started doing my clothing, my fashion thing on Amayo. I came to New York. I was printing T-shirts for this guy called Mashoud in Brooklyn Heights. No, not Brooklyn Heights. Fort Greene. And at Fort Greene, one of my students, I was teaching a lot then, and I also had like individual students that would study with me. This one Nigerian guy, he was a radio executive with East West Records. So he asked me, why don't you come to New York, man? Because I want to learn some martial arts, And I said, that's right, you've been just talking, you never really want to learn. He says, no, if you know what? So we made a bet, or he offered me an opportunity. He said, why don't you come to New York? Here's what I'll do. I'll give you my apartment because I'm moving in with my girl. It's right next to Spike Lee's apartment on Washington Park. You take my apartment for like 6 months or however long you want to stay. You teach me martial arts. I said, that's easy.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I moved up. I came with my printing machine. I moved into Fort Greene. My mom helped me move. I offload my stuff. I put my printing machine in there. Figure out how to rig the electricity. So I had to print T-shirts, and I have to dry your shirts. You gotta have I gotta have 210 coming into the building. So I figured all that stuff out, and then my shoot store was like 4 blocks down the street. So I ran into his store by pure accident because I was like, I recognize his logo. It's called the African Spirit. So you see the spirit was being...
The spirit is already guiding you since day one.
So I walked in the store. There's a mask. African Spirit. I say, what shoes? She's like, no, you're Nigerian. We did the whole Nigerian thing because I've seen him in festivals. And I used to do T-shirts at festivals too. But I was doing more positive messaging T-shirts, like each one teach one. My mind is a positive weapon. My mind is a lethal weapon. You know, like I used to do all this kind of. These are like things that I use in songs now. All like my slogans from T-shirts when I was printing T-shirts. I did all this T-shirt tour through black colleges prior to when I moved to. Like when I was doing the New Race group in DC, I would do college circuit tours to make a lot of money, like a lot of real solid money. That money is how I would buy my merchandise. Part of that was how I would run the project, you know, pay our bills. So I was running my business, you know. The 9 to 5 gig became like, man, I wasted my time doing 9 to 5. Well, this is the, you know, I'm in the street. I'm with the people. I'm getting real money, real cash. I leave this floor pocket full of cash. I see my money. I know where it's going.
And nobody's gonna mess with you because you'll karate kick them.
You know what I'm saying? So that was like, there was a different swag.
Yeah.
Living DC and that's okay. Coming to New York, I had this independence of like I can set up shop right now and I can be rolling, and I did. You know, it was fortunate. I met Mashoud. In 1 week, 2 weeks, I was printing like 4 or 5 cases of T-shirts. Before I knew, because I had a spot on Dumbo, just across the bridge. You know?
Yeah.
And so through my T-shirt printing, and then I did the whole fashion. We did an art show in Dumbo. An outdoor, all the artists came out the street. We did a whole thing. And I was doing fashion. So all the stuff that I printed, all my martial arts clothing, I showcased on the street with all these models, all these girls. Man, my shit was like banging. You know, my stuff was like future Africa. You know, because I designed symbols out of the letters of my name. So when you piece them together, it's like a mask. Because I was being inspired by the African spirit, the mask that Mashoud did. And when I was printing T-shirts for him, I came up with like about 30 different variations of his mask, like different combinations. Put the eye over here, put just this. So that my graphic abilities allowed me to design this little cool image, and I tried to work it into my clothing line and all that stuff. So that process slowly exposed me to Antibalas because I got a storefront here in Williamsburg. After I lost Dumbo, because Dumbo the building got, you know, the building didn't get sold. My landlord, or the guy that I was renting, or the guy that I rented space from, I helped him manage the whole floor. He's a filmmaker and he moved to Japan, so I fortunately met with him and I ran the place for 3 years. So when he came back, I had to move on. So in my move on, I had met this guy called Dima, right here on Lower East Side, right here on Stanton Street. And Dima and I connected through some of the parties that I would be part of. And I was working with these guys called Organic Grooves. I don't know if you've ever heard of Organic Grooves. They used to have a storefront right here in Lower East Side in Suffolk, right here on the other side. Organic Groove was this girl and one other guy, Israeli guy, and they would throw these parties. So Dima asked me to move into his art space because I was waiting for it. He said, "Look, you're looking for a space." Because he knew my spot in Dumbo. I had a dope spot, top floor, right over the bridge. You could see. When I moved in there, it was the last fireworks they had on Brooklyn Bridge, 4th of July. That was the last time they canceled. After that, no more 4th of July. But it was out my window, chilling, and watching the fireworks, dude. And I was like, man, I'm in New York, man. I just moved. So it was the perfect timing, and everything felt like right, you know. I was aligned with all my movements. I was in the right place, right time. So after I met Dima, I moved into his spot, which is down here on Stanton Street, in his basement. It was like the Garden of Eden. The way he rigged his basement, it was just plants everywhere, and then like all these little, you know, like crazy caricatures, like little masks and crazy people that sitting there like. And he had this painting that stretched like that blackboard, like half of it.
Yeah. Oh wow.
But it was a painting of like war scene, like little people. He was just like his style of paint was like super realism, but subject matter very disturbing. He had a little violent images that he liked to paint. So I would sleep in that environment every day, and I took on a gig as a bike messenger for Early Bird. So my early bird back messenger was all just to kind of kill time. So I was experiencing in New York. I became back messenger for 6 months. Got hit by a car. In the meantime, while I was doing that, the space became available for me in Williamsburg. It was like, because I was a friend walking by, I said, hey, there's a storefront. I got the storefront. It was from this guy who was like a jewelry dealer in New York. He's like this Guido guy.
Usually I can give it to you for a couple bucks a month. You don't seem like you look like a good guy.
Exactly.
Amayo? I knew Amayo once.
He says, come to my office. He said, come to my office. His office is on 47th Street, the jewelry district. I walked into his office. He's behind his glass. It's like fucking a big table and rocking shit. Come on in, Amayo. Come on in, Mr. What are you again? Fashion designer? Because I was going to do fashion. But what I had done was, when I first saw the space, I took pictures of it inside. Fucked up. Sewage in the back. The super that showed me the building. I just took pictures, and then I went to do, because I'm an illustrator. I went and did a rendering, drawing of the inside of what it's going to look like when I'm done with it. I said, I got an architecture rendering of what I'm going to do with it inside. And then I told him, because I'm doing fashion, so I went with one of my models, this Russian girl, Russian stripper. She's
real nice. I like
I was dating her then anyway. Like, she was like Dima's like best friend from Moscow. So we had already gone out. I had already been dating her. I didn't want to date a stripper. I know, like, this is. I don't want to get into the strip world, because but she liked me because I had the right energy. I was a fucking therapist for her. I'm like, I'm Mr. Dr. Amayo, I'm having all kinds of problems. Well, maybe if you stop stripping, But I never said that. Yeah. But I was, we were like really. She was really nice to me, and it also helped me understand that world as well. I became an advocate for strippers. You gotta let them do that thing.
It seems like you had so many journeys within journeys, and was able to still, be yourself. And that pops in my head. Like, how were you able to be true to yourself in so many different worlds you was a part of and didn't know, and then you was getting to know, but you knew it wasn't part of you? How were you able to be, even in the music industry too, you're going to meet a lot of people. What helped you to always remain true to you, even when those challenging moments will come where you're probably going to get tested?
Man, it might sound cliche, but it's martial arts, man. Like when I broke down some of the things that I have come to be aware of, after some deeper study in universal energies. There's this guy that I came in contact with called Nassim Haramein. Haramein, he's like this. He's like a hippie scientist, physicist, but I kind of resonate with him because of his vibe. Again, it's about the vibration. It's not necessarily, hey, this guy went to school, did all this research, and he's a badass, and he can spill the knowledge that he has collected. But this dude is so laid back. He's so like me. Like, he's a yogi, and so he made some pretty cool connections. The kind of connections that I kind of made when I was a kid. So I identified with the way he came about his information. How he was able to decipher and extrapolate how Einstein came up with his field equation theory. He got a little deeper into the energy of torque. The torque energy and how spin occurs and the science of it. And he did the whole math. And he was one of those guys that he would ask the dumbest question, but the right ones. So through his way of him asking questions, he was able to meet the right people that he partnered with and wrote all these cool equations that had some answers for where does this MC equals square? How does any object acquire that energy, the gravitational pull, and how does it's inherently in everything. So, but what is it? So he did it in math and kind of figured that shit out. So when I listened to a lot of his lectures, and then I watched one of the solutions he also came up with through some of his team. They came up with a solution using secret geometry to figure out what the yin and yang, how it really looks. You know, so when you spin it into a 3D form, it creates this double torus. So the black hole in that white dot you see is actually a hole that goes through each other. It's like looking at one side, it's if you look turn your head, it's black, right? So the other way, the other hole is white. So if you do it in 3D and then turn it up, then you see this double torus. His explanation of how energy all over the world, anywhere, and all over the universe, inside of us, in every shape and every atom, behaves like that. They all spin in this form and creates this double torus energy spin. And that's what the yin and yang is explaining. That's why they call it the universal force of force of the universe, right? You know, and that force is constantly spinning, and it gets its energy from it. It as it's spinning, it's creating energy, and the energy is endless and it's continuous.
You martial arts was a big part of your life and still is.
Yes.
Even just as important as music, what I learned in this interview. And you're also a teacher. And I'm curious to know, what is, when you have students, what is the most important lesson that you want to teach them when they take a class from you, that you want to make sure by the time that they leave, they got it drilled in their head?
Yeah. One of the, over years, it didn't happen obviously over, right away.
Yeah.
It took me time to harness that. It's also a message. What is the message that I'm passing on as a student comes into my class or when you leave? Besides the fact you're learning, the first lesson about self-defense is love. Because first I tell them, like, every time I move, before I initiate that move, I'm trying to express something. What are you? Every time you are, once you step, or once you throw your hand, or once you do any kind of move, there's an intention behind that move. Behind that move must first be love, so that when you strike the person, there's care behind it, because you're not trying to remain. There's many processes through that. First, it comes from your attitude, the way you're looking, and if, for example, before, at the end of the class, as someone is leaving class, for example, what I always tell my students is, like, if you find yourself in a situation where you must get away, first you must learn how to distract your, antagonizer, if you will. And the first way to distract him is to love them and smile at them, because someone who is trying to attack you is coming with two things: fear and anger. You cannot give him those back, because he needs that to accomplish his goal. So you got to give them love and happiness. It's just a philosophy. It's not, doesn't mean like, hey, I'm you know what I'm saying? So it's already coming from the way you are feeling and thinking, and you are ready. You left class, you just did all those movements, you're energized, but I told you about just being observation. You got to be aware. Your awareness, you got to always watch where you go as you enter the room, know the way to get out and where you came in. Don't put yourself in the center of a crowd. Be at the end of that crowd so you be at the end of it. Don't always be in the middle of the crowd. Like all those kind of like ways of being. So, and then that is self-care. It's come out of love, because I don't want to like trample over that person. So therefore, let me stand this way. That kind of way. Because I don't want to like hit this guy too hard. Let me change my angle. And because I don't want to hurt this guy because he's afraid and he wants to rob me, let me not, because I know I can't deal with the fact that I killed someone. First, you can't handle the emotion of taking someone else's life, or even injuring someone to a part that you incapacitate them. When you get to wherever you go, I guarantee you, it stays in your head. That's you just hurt yourself, because that's because you're connected to people. When you're connected, every time you hit someone, you should feel the pain too as you're hitting that person, because when you're hitting that person, you're delivering some damage. So you need to be totally aware of what's happening. So therefore, if I'm aware and I'm doing it out of love, I'm already aware. I'm not going to hit you the full thing. I'll just pop you just to kind of get you,
to deliver a message.
Yeah. So I'm always telling you, give that person the message that you care for them by laughing, distracting them, popping them, and then escaping. Because you need to at least, first of all, distract them with the way you're feeling. Laugh as hard as you can. That could be your first defense. Because that person will be like, what's wrong with this fool, But you just took him out of his game, right?
And also, it seems like when you deliver from a message of love and clarity, your mind is clear.
Exactly.
If you have the fear and anger, it's
no
cluttered.
clarity. Yep.
No clarity. You're blocked. You're not allowing everything to see for what it is.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're more open.
Yeah. And then when I was a fighter, when I used to participate in a lot of combat and control combat, like in sparring, I never lost a fight because I was never angry. I was always, the person would pop me and I would smile. Man, thanks, man. That was fucking good, dude. Come on. So while I'm praising him, he drops his guard. Or while you because you are delivering care, you're offering that person, I'm praising you, man. You're awesome, dude. No, man, if you had dropped your hand, you probably would have forgotten me a little bit, we are in this to learn. So that's always going to be my attitude. So therefore, when I'm with someone who's, we just here to this is like sparring. This is not going to kill each other, but that is always what most people teach.
Right.
The killer instinct.
Destroy the enemy.
Yeah. A better killer is a lover. You are more lethal because you can see clearly. You have you see, you can know when, okay, that's lethal, that's not, you can someone who doesn't have that is just fighting blindly, right? So you really don't know the outcome of what you're doing. And then when that happens, you'll go through all the emotions that take you out of your whole game. So it's the game of fighting really is about the mind,
and it's so fun because you use all that in your music, and I'm curious to know, how do you create music for Antibalas? Like, what is the writing process that you go through to write these lyrics and tell these stories and messages on stage? How is it? Is it spontaneous? Is it planned? How does it, especially now with this new album coming out, and stuff like, how is that? How do you write and create that?
Well, I can give you 3 scenarios of how. I'll give you, it's best to do it by example.
Right.
One example would be for, let me just go by an example of how not a typical collaboration, but there is a process, like Gold Rush, for example.
Love that song.
It's a good example because that song came out right at a point of transition in the band where we had some of the greatest musicianships operating in the same room, the same platform, the same band, and it was a bit maybe too much. too many creative energy was just all over the place, We had about 8 composers, but it was beautiful. At the same time, the tension led to the writing of the music of it, And that was one time where I did not contribute anything to the musical part of I only contributed the things that I would normally do, a couple of notes here and there, during the process of writing, and just being there to to help contribute with where the song was going. And then the music was instrumental, and then we left it there. So I'm in the middle of writing the next, or at least I was writing one long form song, Tombstone, which I had been working on prior to the previous album, which was when we did Security. So I had started working on that one. That one was maybe could have been on Security album, but in my mind, I knew it wasn't really ready. But I was caught up in that space. I was writing. That song took me quite a bit of work because I started writing at a time when I went through some changes in my own living, and I was dealing with, am I going to move to France? I spent some time in France trying to reflect on what I was doing in America because I was supposed to have gone.
Yeah.
So and I'm like caught up, and I'm like, man, this thing is taking me. This is like a big world I'm in now, and I'm learning to compose. Okay, where am I going now? Because I have this body of songs, all the songs from this album coming out now. They've all been composed already, like over 15 years ago, some of them 20 years ago. Because I was writing them like I teach Kung Fu. I have one part, one line. I just take that one line, I loop that for like 3 months because I needed to give it the same type of attention and the same type of, I needed to I needed to give it some respect.
Yeah, and you also, in a sense, you're creating, so you're giving the time for it to grow.
Exactly. I wanted it to grow on me. I wanted that melody or that rhythm to be the DNA of that song. So I needed to loop it for a long time. So anything that I wrote outside of that is in support. It's a response. So it's as a matter of fact, this rhythm or this melody here asks for this accompaniment. So that's my approach. And because I'm more solitude in writing, it was a little difficult to write with the group. But I would contribute in the places that I knew I was able to jump on right away if something hits me. So there was always an opportunity to present an idea, to present an accompaniment to someone else's thought, to someone else's, So, but I was not a big fan of that because I always felt like I wasn't so much into the jam. Let's just jam it out and just come up with things while we're there, which is cool. It's another way of writing. So I wasn't really that versed, or at least it wasn't as inspiring for me yet. Because I like that too, but I wasn't my creative process was already occupied in figuring out where Kung Fu meets Afrobeat. Because for me, I'm the Kung Fu. The Afrobeat is the music. So I'm saying, so how did I meet Kung Fu? That was like what I was trying to, because there are so many ways I could have looked at it and say, I could just come up with a Kung Fu name and, come up with some good soundtrack like the Shaw Brothers, which is I'm a huge fan of the Shaw Brothers music soundtracks, and make the song banging, shafts, that's all crazy, awesome rhythms that really expresses movement and mind, mode, and fight stage and whatnot. So I wanted the music to inform me. So therefore, I took my time in writing all the little parts and looped that stuff for a long time. As I'm practicing my form, I got my tape recorder on my headphones. I'm practicing my form as I'm listening to these little rhythms. So that was my process of coming up with all these parts that came together, into this body of songs that I would play as full orchestra because I was creating where Kung Fu meets Afrobeat. And because the process was about creating process, I wasn't thinking of recording or putting it out because I was still all this stuff. I wanted it to have like a nice curve. I had an idea to have 3 album deep of group of songs that I could do, and some of them are long, some of them are short. I kind of had this. I was still sketching it out.
Right.
So the band Antibalas was always there to support all I was writing because some of them I would share in Antibalas, like a song called MTTT. In the beginning, that was just the first song I wrote, which I wanted. That was the intention behind that song. Was I wanted to write a song that was timeless. So that's why it was called MTTT, like mother. It's like a mother time, mother talker, yo. So it had all that stuff attached to it, and so when I wrote it with that intention in mind, and I spent a whole year writing that song. So I presented it to the song out of there was a pressure to write more songs. We got to go on the road. We were playing at No More for like 6 months. So we needed to add more songs. So when but they knew I was working on stuff. Everybody kind of said, I was working on something. He just wouldn't share anything. I wasn't comfortable sharing anything yet. So these guys went to music school. You guys are like music students and blah, blah, blah. I didn't want anyone to knock any of my ideas down when it has not been fully developed. So time came when it was time to share my first song, when it wasn't fully ready. So it got ready on the rehearsal. So I just basically, because I had all the parts in my head already, I had already been looping that for almost a year already, been looping that stuff in my head. And I had all the parts together. It was very, as I say, because it was one of it was the first song that expresses my logical thinking, the way my mind was working at that time, because I had this logic of how I was building. It's like a building block of how a group of rhythm jump off the other one, and other one is speaking to the other one. So it was like just the way that I wrote that music was, for me, was like that was like my genesis to how I wanted to write, because it was obviously everything around me was influencing me, but I wanted a formed song of A B A B. It has the A part, it goes to B, and goes back to A, and then back to B. And I wanted my song to be full, long form. So we would play MCTT at No More. That became like our closing song. That was the song that we use as our like ace in the pocket, our back pocket song. You got something, yeah. Want to play with a big band, or want to play with like Medeski? That's a song we'll play with them, because that song was like, it was full, and they love that song too. It's one of their favorite songs for Antibalas. But I didn't want to release it as Antibalas because it was a Fu meets Kung Fu. It was Kung Fu meets afro-beat theme that I was still working on. So it wasn't really ready to be exposed, like fully. So I would just use it. We would play it. So all the songs were getting their workout, and that's how I saw it. So then I started this whole thing called training series. Like I'm training in martial arts, because every song was written at my dojo at the Afro spot across the street. So I considered all those songs as training sessions, a session to go in the gym and work out a punch. So each song was so long and they kind of meander, and I was able to write more tunes using the same process, but now it's time to change and doing different variations and moving things around. Instead of A B A B, one was B A B, one be like A B. So it's kind of like now I'm doing variations, and melodies were being related to another melody. And then I was thinking, how can I find a theme on one song that's being expressed on another song, so that there was a link, and I could do it in many different ways, either through words or through melody or through the theme of the songs itself. So that part was the next thing to figure out, and I said through words. So I hadn't written any words definitely. I mean, I had ideas, had title. The title gave me ideas on what to sing, and I didn't want to sing anything specific. I didn't want to finish my words.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be an expression of an idea of that title that I was still mapping out, right? So by the time we reached the stage, Trump is now in office. So I've been working all the songs, and I'm like, okay, maybe this is time for Kung Fu meets Afrobeat to, do its work. Maybe it's time to find the soundtrack for 2020, the year that I know is going to be a major change. Maybe we need to find something now, like a different way of messaging, so people can be resilient. This is what Kung Fu is all about, right? And if you look at documentaries on Kung Fu, there's a new one just coming out on Shaw Brothers, and Martin just actually texted that to me just last night, right? Netflix, and they were talking about they actually went deeper into the things about Kung Fu. Kung Fu is an art of the worker, and because it's about adroitness, skills, developing the best skill at whatever you do. So it's not an elitist thing. It's an art for the struggling man. It's a voice for the it's like, so then they linked it with Bruce Lee and how it came about, and how Bruce Lee was pushing the Chinese who have been undermined and marginalized in the film industry, and like kind of like how they're able to readdress how they use martial arts to take back the Chinese culture. Who are the oppressors, the Japanese. So all how their stories now started taking charge of that. They started beating the oppressor. So in my mind, I'm like, this is great. I want to write a whole. So I started developing a whole film concept, and then I said, all the songs that I'm writing now I can tell the stories like a film, and how I'm going to like use the new colonizers. I'm going to use this music, the Chinese. I didn't just learn martial arts for nothing. I said, maybe this is the reason why I studied martial arts. Now that I'm a Sifu, as a Sifu,
what is Sifu?
Sifu is like a master in martial arts.
Oh, okay.
You've done the style for an extended period of time, and you've taught in that style for an extended period of time.
Gotcha.
And then you are awarded that title as a Sifu. And you are to deploy injustice. You are to you don't take sides. So now I wanted to, what should I be doing now as a Sifu through my music? Through the music. Okay, Kung Fu meets afro-beat. Sifu talks about love. Talks about how to fight from a love perspective and how to hold on to your dreams. So now I'm looking at, this is my purpose. This is like, this song will now actually be able, or this group of songs will allow me to posture into a place where I can now demand from the Chinese culture that has trained me to become a Sifu. Well, why don't we together reshape our nations, and then use this universal knowledge of equilibrium as a way to bring the world together. That's kind of like my whole big idea. Through film and through songwriting and through messaging, I can actually inspire.
It seems to me that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's not one of the final pieces, but let's just say that Kung Fu was one of the final stories or final pieces within you that you was figuring out to share in music now more thoroughly, more expressively, more spiritually, because this thing has helped you in many forms in your life, and you probably had bits and pieces of music that show that. But now you have a body of work that you've been creating, allowing times to grow to fully show that. So it's a story and a journey of you, what this has helped you, and also how this can actually help in the times of now, and also in the future and what's going on. It seems like almost like it was like one of the final pieces to connect that you wanted to tell in your music. And that's why it took so long to create this and let it grow and nurture it.
You need, it's like when you learn martial arts, you can't be a Sifu, it takes many years. You learn these movements, and then they'll tell you, just learn right now. Do you understand in the future what that movement means? That's kind of typical thing you learn in martial arts. Sifu comes and say, you should, hold your palm in a fist and bow. That's it. It's respect. That's how you do. That's what we do. But the more I learn about it, the more I learn, I say, well, this palm doesn't just mean a palm. It represents something. When the fist means something, it represents something. It's like, the earth, and the sky and the earth come together, working together. So there's always messages within movements that you can extrapolate, and then you can apply it. And that's what martial arts is teaching us. So like one more statement that I will make, which is, at this point now, I was able to figure out stuff like music as a weapon. Well, if music is a weapon, well, I want my music to be a weapon of good. If music is medicine, I want to be doctor of music. You know what I'm saying? This is what this music is now telling me, is put the intent behind the music, not just to talk about how your life was effed up.
Right.
Not about, or glorify someone else, but talk about an intention or express an intention behind your messaging, and that is some of the things that I'm trying to move into, an area where anything that I want to write, messaging wise and lyrics, I'm putting intention behind that lyrics. I want it to be able to help or to paint the picture that I would like to see in the future. that would include us all, So therefore, when I, stuff like in Hook and Crook, it's another example when we're talking about the process of writing.
Love that
I
song
kind of departed on Gold Rush after that music was written, and when I got to the place where I was going to try to learn how to do messaging properly, I was thinking of Gold Rush. What did we learn from this era of Gold Rush? In the messaging subtly put into that song, I was trying to express reparation without making it reparation.
Right.
It was at the end of the song, So I needed to logically get my way to the end of that message. So at the end of this, if I said, well, let me just remind us about the history, because in case you forget, in case you've forgotten, this is the history.
Even in Hook and Crook is powerful when you say detach.
Yeah.
Detach. I was like, to me, it felt like, and we all felt that way. To me, what it resembled for me, how I connected to being part of that world at times.
Yeah.
Corruption and falling in and following everybody else and not knowing
Exactly.
what you are.
Yeah.
But detaching from all that and really finding who and what you are.
And then come back.
And then always allowing yourself to be open to learn and grow, because you say, teach us.
Teach us.
But you feel it in that song.
Yeah.
And that's something that I love to see you. When I saw you perform once, and we were supposed to see you again in DC, but you guys canceled on the Saturday night, and we got there. It was, I forgot where, it was probably like a year ago. Where you had 2 nights.
Yeah.
We did Friday, we canceled the Saturday, and we just we actually went with my wife. We went there just to see you guys. I said I was going to surprise her. And then we found out that it was canceled. Like, whatever. We'll catch him another time. Which I still want to do. But I love when you perform, because I noticed that you're connecting not only to yourself, to other things. And I wanted to ask you, when you're performing, are you connecting to the spiritual world as well, and spirits around you? Like, for me, I love those type of things.
Yeah.
What are you going through in those moments when you're feeling it? And,
Well,
and I know there's a couple things where if you could share certain things, like, because you're very spiritual and you have a knowledge that we are here, but there's another realm, a spiritual realm, and I see that while you perform, and I connect to that as well, because I have a spiritual teacher, and when I do my shows, I always tell myself it's not always about the laugh, but what am I also trying to say here? What is the lesson behind here? Not all dick jokes. I want to have a purpose to make sure that when you leave, you laugh, but you learn something to let go or to become better with yourself. And while you're performing, I see that. So what are you connecting to spiritually when you're going through these songs in a trance,
Okay, well, I'm glad you asked that, because like I have a ritual before I go on. Obviously, everyone, I recommend having a ritual of some sort. And besides it, I have my own individual ritual, because as I start painting my face, I'm invoking my grandmother. My grandmother was the one that first exposed me to the teachings of Orisha. And my element is Shango. I'm fire, thunder, and I'm very electric. And so I recognize that, so I try to magnify that. So magnify that which you are in your element, and you would be whatever you would elevate. So that to me is always crucial to my preparation. And then I'm very, very free. I don't like, yes, I like conformity, and I study the words and the rhythms of the words, because I get into the shape of all the words. That's why, like, when I'm writing lyrics, I like to select words that remind me of certain things that can magnify that, whatever that element is. So every song has an element in it. Like I look every time. Obviously, within each song, I've already internalized each song, and they suggest some of the deities in the Orisha tradition, because I've done some deeper studies in that, and I try to recognize that the rhythms of 6/8 are really, really crucial. So within this body of music, I have my own soundtrack, and So I teach when I do workshops, which I've been developing these workshops on how to, how to reconnect back to your roots through your manipura, your solar plexus chakra. That's your who you are. And there's some all these exercises that starts with your who you are, which comes from your name, why you were named who you were named, and what surrounded your entering this this universe. How you enter, how you came out of your mom's womb. There is you have a melody and you got your own groove, right? So yeah, everybody got their own groove because as you were being created in that womb, the things that your parents or the person carrying, things that they are doing, is very important. What you're listening to, how people come up with names for that baby, very important. So I always say, like, if you could be cool, talk to your mom, or talk to before you come to my workshop, do a little research. Find out what when of the day, when you were born, who was there, whatever, who gave you that name, why did they give you the name? Once you know how to give you the name, that's where we start from. That's where you start, because that becomes your entry point to your source. And how you start understanding who you are, and how you start understanding what your element is. When you go to see, say, like a priest or whatever, they can kind of see that because they can see how you resonate and how your vibration. That's how they do. They can read your vibration and know which element you resonate with most, right? So I know my element. I also know my element needs a support. So I'm very open. So I became. And I call myself Amishongo of Unity because I work with all the other deities. I don't discriminate, so I'm wide open. So whenever I'm performing, I'm always trying to catch something. There's something and for me, it's mostly in the music. And the cool thing about playing in an afro-beat band of this size, there are so many rhythms going on. So I can attach to one of them, and that becomes my focus. I can attach to one little section of a groove, and that's where I draw from. So it's a cool exercise for my mind and for when I'm flowing. So I'm not always, yes, I know all my lyrics already, but within that lyric, within that body of work, I have unlimited variations, And that is also in martial arts when I teach a form called Flower Fist, which is also in the album. So that song, Fist of Flowers, was written about the form called Flower Fist. That form is the form that I teach to children. And it's also the form that we use as a magnet to draw students to the school because that form looks beautiful, looks so cool. When you do it in the mall, people say, "Oh, I love that form. What school is that?" Oh man, I want to come to Kung Fu. So that was what we use as a magnet. And that form it's called Flower Fist, and the Flower Fist has 5 petals. It's also the most resilient flower in all of Asia. It's the one that grows in any weather. So it has resilience built in it already in its DNA. So I took on that as the beginning form of how I enter into martial arts or what I teach people in martial arts. And within that form, I find all the wisdom in it. I find all kinds of stuff in that form. It has 92 movements. Each movement has 15 to 20 variations. So 92 movements. Yeah, exactly.
Unlimited.
That's what I'm talking about. That is how I see all the music. Unlimited. So now when I'm in a ring or I'm in a fighting stance, I'm unlimited. I'm just chilling. Doesn't matter what you do, dude. You move, I got you. Just the fact that you move, the fact that you are coming at me, you are vulnerable. So that way of thinking allows you to look at your antagonizer or your opponent as like, man, I feel so sorry for this guy because it doesn't matter what he does.
You're like water.
Boom.
You are now checking out
The Win Podcast,
where the everyday people
are the celebrities.
So let's get to know them.